This is where truth and vulnerability are put on the altar. Fear and failures are celebrated as they should be. And we unapologetically peel back all the layers. Welcome to Bare Naked Radio. It's time to get raw, real, and inspired with your host, Dawn Gluskin.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bare Naked Radio. I am your host, Dawn Gluskin, and here today with an amazing human being. We met back in September at a podcasting fest, actually, called the New Media Summit. Lea Bayles. Say hello, Lea.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here, Dawn. Thank you.
Yeah, I love Lea so much. She just has such a great, beautiful energy to her. And the work she does in the world, she helps entrepreneurs, creatives, and change makers thrive and shine. I love that. Thrive and shine while they create the impact they dream of. She's a speaker, a teacher, a coach, and a catalyst for the creative power of love. That's so good. She has a master's degree in psychology, as well as decades of experience in spirituality, education, mind-body healing, shamanism, energy medicine, dance, yoga, qigong, expressive arts, and dreamplay. I mean, just all that stuff. So good. She's got so much to give and to offer us. She's created healing meditations, spoken word performances, integrative wellness curriculum, and is also the producer and host of her own show called We Are More Radio. She does mentoring, retreats, classes, workshops, and keynotes, and is just an all-around amazing human being. So welcome, and thank you for being here, Lea.
Thank you. I love what you're doing with the show, and I'm really honored to be here. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you. So let's just jump right in. I always like to start off and give people like a little taste of like your journey and how you got to where you are. Cause you have such a diverse background. You have your master's degree in psychology. So you could, do something in that realm, but then you have all these spiritual modalities too, that you bring to the table, and you're just up to so much cool stuff. So just tell us a little bit of how you got to where you are and how you chose, to be an entrepreneur, because sometimes that's a little crazy. It's not always it sometimes can be an intense gig, but you choose it because there's something deep within you, that there's a passion that gets you out of bed and wanting to help people. So if you could just let us know a little bit about that, that would be amazing.
Well, thank you. Well, I'd always been interested, like since I was a young teenager, I was interested in energy work and yoga, and had done a lot of that. And at first, nobody around was doing it. That was a long time ago. So I was doing a lot of it on my own and from books, and then had the opportunity to have some wonderful teachers in high school who were involved in the human potential movement really early. And they would take a few of us from their classes to the college to be involved in like an encounter group or, some of the personal growth, this was like, in the early 70s. And so it was really exciting and fun to be around some of that then. And I'd always been very interested. I was born into a very sensitive body, and I had an immune disorder. So like when I was born, I almost died a few times because I didn't make gamma globulin, so one of the immune components, and it was an experimental treatment that saved my life. But there was always that sense of being loving, being physical, being really happy, being alive, and also being real sensitive, like to stress and to foods and stuff. And so in that, very early learning that as a teenager, if I started meditating and I did yoga, it would help the symptoms, being able to get rid of things like irritable bowel syndrome. And I had eating disorders for a while. And, like people say, well, how did you get into teaching stress? People that deal with stress, like, man, I was a poster child for all the ways that stress could show up in your body. And, it gave me that great opportunity to notice how yoga, meditation, being loving in our bodies can help transform those things. So I was really fortunate to have a lot of those things pop up and be able to work with them and have the symptoms go away. And certainly it helped me through my 3 pregnancies when I was in my 20s. And then I was in grad school in my early 30s and had a really serious immune system breakdown. Even though, I'd been doing yoga, I'd been doing all this stuff, I was interested in it. I got into this pattern in grad school. I had 3 little, very young children. I was volunteering. I was doing my yoga teacher's apprenticeship. I was like, thought I was superwoman. I thought I
Yeah.
could do everything and take care of everybody. And I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And, I remember, Dawn, sometimes wishing that someone would tell me to slow down.
Mm, yeah.
And, of course, from this perspective, you and I know someone was telling me to slow
Right.
down, right?
Right.
My body was saying, slow down. And it was whispering, and then it was talking louder, and then it was shouting. And ironically, I was writing a paper at the time I had this immune system collapse on mind body healing.
Wow.
Yeah. I
The
said,
irony there. You're like, wow.
exactly. The irony was I was not following the first principle, which is
Yeah.
listen to your body, listen to your sweet human body, and, follow that and respond to it. So it was really one of the best things that ever happened to me, even though it was kind of devastating. I dropped out of
Mm.
school and couldn't do much of anything for a while, but it led me, even more deeply into that passion I'd always had for, how do we activate that extraordinary power of healing that we know is there? And how do we activate these inner powers of creativity and healing that are so much beyond what we usually experience in our daily lives?
I love that. And there are so many gems in what you just said there. So first, when you said that the best thing that ever happened to you, like I can totally relate to that, because one of my best things that ever happened to me was when my $3 million company went bankrupt and I lost everything and I was broken
Oh,
and it was the worst time of my life. But now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, thank you, God. Like,
yeah.
and I just want to point that out to our listeners out there, because, no matter what you're going through, there's always something that's happening for you and not to you. And I know when you're in the muck of it, it doesn't feel like it. And you're just like, yeah, right. It's easy to say, but if you can take that perspective and like, what are you trying to teach me? What am I here to learn? There's
Yeah.
something so beautiful in that. And
That's so great.
isn't it? If we can just do that, and of course I always have to take my own advice too in the bad in those
Mhm.
moments, and then also that there was something also too about you, at such a young age, connecting with yoga and meditation and learning, taking that path. And even though you were on that path, you still had a healing crisis with being stressed in your own body. But it's interesting how that happens too. We teach what we have learned, like our mess becomes our message and all that. But we also need to learn it deeper. There's things that'll happen to us so that we become even more masterful in our own message. So that was like another gift of what
Yes.
I heard and what you were saying. So that's something too for the listeners to think of, even if there's something completely ironic, it's just contributing to your mastery.
Yeah. And being loving with ourselves in that. It's like,
Absolutely.
okay, well, that was kind of crazy that I was writing this paper and I wasn't doing it. And like, oh, well, it's being human. Here we are,
Yes.
life in a body. And,
Yeah.
and if we can even open, we're talking about like how hard it is when we're in those toughest times and we can even get mad at people if they're like, oh, it's probably really a gift. It's like,
Right. You don't want to hear it until you're
don't tell
ready.
me that. Yeah.
You have to be ready to hear that. Yeah.
But I think if we can adopt the perspective that even a little part of our mind is curious to like, okay, everything I thought I wanted to have happen in this it's not going the way my part of my mind planned. But it's like, what if I could see, what if there was something in here that was trying, like you said, to happen for me? What
Yeah.
if in here there's healing? What if in here there's growth? Because there always is. And it's not a Pollyanna sort of
Mm-mm.
approach. That's what opens us to, I think, what our soul is really calling us to do in the world.
Yeah, that's so good. And even if you're in the muck of that pain and you just feel like you're like looking up at the sky and like, why me? What did I do to deserve this? Or, crying on the bathroom floor, like we've all had those moments. If you can just get a little curious and change that instead of asking why me, and just say, okay, what are you here? I'm ready to receive whatever you're trying to teach me. I'm open to receiving it, and you'll see a shift happen usually pretty
Absolutely.
quickly too when you get into that space. So I love that you did that work and and you're able to share it with us. And yeah, I can relate to it in my own version of that. So
Oh, and like you
Yeah.
said, I didn't do it once. It's like every day, it's not,
Right.
yeah, every day we're needing to do that.
Yeah.
And then it becomes kind of more of a play, I think, too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Daily, even sometimes moment by moment, we need to shift.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And then look, and when you do that, look how now you're able to show up in the world and you've transmuted a lot of that pain and able to share it with others. So it's like just a gift when you can grasp that. So yeah.
Mhm.
So on Bare Naked Radio, we like to talk a lot about what I call growth opportunities. I'm not a big fan of the word failure because I always use that in quotes, but I think like the world just wants to hear some more rawness, vulnerability. Like if you go on social media, like most of the time you're just seeing people talk about their like highlights reels, right? It's like the curated moments, the perfect picture, the perfect
Mhm.
life. And like we all know, well, not everyone even knows this, but behind the scenes though, there's the mess and there's all the stuff and the heartache and I think it's just so beautiful when we can share that and get a little naked and be more vulnerable and let people know like, hey, I'm human just like you, especially when they see someone like you that like has it all together and you just have this beautiful energy and you're doing great work, but you're just as human as the rest of us, right?
Oh,
And that's
man.
you're like, oh yeah. So I love sharing what it's like to be human and so in that sense, like what is one of your like biggest quote unquote failures or heartaches or something that's really shaped you in your world and how did it expand your growth?
Well, there are a couple that come to mind. One has to do with a business that was just a few years ago. Probably the very biggest one, which was like sometimes I don't even tell this because not because I'm embarrassed, but kind of sometimes if people like almost feel the devastation of it first,
Mhm.
But when I'd always been kind of afraid of turning 50.
Mm.
Something about that was kind of scary to me. Actually, I have to jump ahead and say it's been marvelous since I turned
Yes.
50. It's fabulous. I love it. However, the like year and a half before I turned 50, everything fell apart.
Mm.
I was in a corporate job that actually was kind of tailor made for me. So I got to work from home. And then I kept realizing I need to quit this. And I was making good money, half time, but I was making good money. And I was like, I have to quit this.
Mm. Yeah.
And I was in a marriage, 25 years to a man I deeply loved.
Mm.
And we were just so stuck. We'd done all the skillful and unskillful things people in that situation do to
Right.
work with it. And I just knew, I felt honestly like I was dying.
Oh yeah.
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 And my dreams were like that. And, really
Mm.
pointed.
Yeah.
We had gone to therapy. We'd done lots of stuff. I knew I needed to leave.
Mm. That's
And
hard. It's hard to
I
come
know,
to truth with that, especially when the love is still there. I get that totally.
really
Yeah.
hard. And we had 3 daughters and we were great at lots of
Mhm.
things, and this is kind of superficial, but so many people would tell us things like, oh, every family I know besides yours is dysfunctional. Yours is amazing. Right.
Right. And
Well,
then you feel guilty, like I'm your role
yeah,
model and I'm falling
yeah,
apart. I get that too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And people would say, he's such an amazing man.
Right.
Or I'd say, well, we love each other and we're getting a divorce. I'm like,
Right.
why?
You can be
What in
both.
the world
Yeah.
is that about? And
Mm.
so, yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely can.
Absolutely.
And so in May of 2004, in 1 month time, I quit my corporate job and left my marriage, which also meant leaving the home and the land that
Mm.
I absolutely loved. Um, the divorce came through. Seems like there were a couple other things. Oh, my oldest daughter, announced her engagement, which of course is a really joyful thing. But then also to be planning a wedding in the midst of that was kind of challenging.
Right.
And so, it was like everything just fell apart. It was, and I say fell apart, but it was like in a way that it needed to. And it was choice. I made the choices to do it, and it was devastating in lots of
Yeah.
ways. Yeah.
Gosh, because just one of those things alone, like leaving a job, getting a divorce, moving, a wedding plan, like those are significant things. And like the universe just decided to give you all of that all at
Mhm.
once. And I know
All
you
at
had mentioned
once.
also cancer and just,
Well, then that was 6 months later. So
yeah.
6 months later, my beloved John, my beloved former husband, was
Mm.
diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
And so, and my daughters, 2 of my daughters who were twins were in their senior year of high school, and the oldest was in her senior year of college. And, so that was a big year for them, and they needed a lot of support. And so, it was like wanting to kind of create this new life, sort of, that I was creating, and at the same time hold the family together and do
Yeah.
what I could do. What does love look like here? And
Mm.
that's, what in this situation does love look like for me and what I'm needing, and also for these people who are really needing that I so love, deeply,
Yeah.
deeply love, and that so desperately needed support and holding together. So, and then just a year after we were divorced, my former husband died.
Mm.
And in those last few months, I moved back in to take care of him.
Oh,
And there was a real deep opening to each other.
yeah.
So, it was, and in that, again, it was devastating. And I blame myself sometimes.
Mm.
Other
That's hard.
people honestly did blame me. People
Wow.
would say things like to me, like, well, he got cancer because you left him.
Oh,
And, it's like, well, I don't know how all those things work, but, so it's that, yeah, it did in lots of ways feel like deep failure, in some ways, a breakdown of what I had built and created. And yet there was that feeling inside me that I knew I needed to do it, and I knew I could, with support of the divine and my dear friends, and this growing strength inside myself, I could find a way in this for it to be, I don't want to say a good thing, that of course that he was sick, but that we would all grow in this, and that we
right.
could grow in love in this process of being heartbroken.
Yeah. And look at you now. I mean, you're just such a bright light in this world. And I wanted
Mm,
to address one of the things you mentioned was, what other what they were projecting onto you and saying, oh, well, you caused this. And I just want to point that out to our listeners, because sometimes, this show is about living your best life now and not having that deathbed regret if I wish I had lived the life true to myself and not the one others had wished for me. And we make a lot of our decisions every day, moment by moment, thinking, oh, what is so-and-so going to say? What are they going to think? They're going to judge me. And that's how we live our life. And that's how we go to the deathbed, not living the life we wanted. But I wanted to point out, whoever said that to you, and they were obviously grieving and doing their best, right? And it wasn't
yeah.
about you, it was about them. And, we just have to kind of like forgive people and not take it, because that's not the truth about you, obviously. But I just wanted to put that out to the listeners, because you will get feedback, especially when you are living a life an alignment. It felt aligned for you. You were dying inside. You were having dreams about death, and you had to like leave that marriage, and it was heartbreaking for you. And then to get that feedback, and people just need to know that that does happen, but you don't have to accept it as truth about you.
I think that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And it feels like part of that whole process of, my heart broke over and
Yeah.
over and over in that process, and realizing at some point the biggest pain comes from resisting that breaking. And that
Yes.
really, in some ways, our hearts are meant to break, because
Absolutely.
they break open, and then there's just more room for a whole different level of love that I didn't understand before.
Well,
You
that
know,
saying is, you have to feel it to heal it. So just let it
Mhm.
in, feel that pain, be with that pain, and then transmute it.
And then we have greater capacity. We have greater
Yeah.
capacity for love and courage and all those
And
heart-centered
empathy and
qualities.
just
Yes.
connecting with other humans. Yes. All of
Yeah.
that. It's so
Yeah.
good. So how
Yeah.
did you get through that? I mean, the toughest time, and just listening to that, it's like, gosh, the pain, like we can feel your pain. And like, so how did you work through it? I know it wasn't Pollyanna, like, oh, I just woke up one day and everything was beautiful, but what were some of the things you did to
Well,
move
there were some real
forward?
practical things. I'm glad you asked that question. There were some very practical things, because I realized, it was really, I was the one in the position to guide things through this
Mm,
process, in terms of helping my kids and John and all of us let this be as loving and good as it could be,
right.
And so, how can I do that? How can I get myself in that place? And some of the ways were pretty simple. I had a hooray journal,
Ooh, I love
you
it.
know, and like like a gratitude journal, but I called it my hooray journal, and I would start each sentence with hooray,
Mm,
and it would be something, because for me that word hooray kind of pulls up in
yeah,
me
it's a high
that big,
vibe.
yeah, that high vibe,
Mm,
exactly.
yeah.
And so it would be, and it might be, hooray, yesterday I got a note from a student telling me how much she enjoyed something we did years ago, or,
Mhm.
hooray, I walked out today and saw the first violets blooming, or,
Yeah.
just even really little things it could be. But I just pumped that up, and I did that every morning and every evening through that time. And I could feel it, as you said, raising my vibe,
Yeah.
and really, really helpful. So simple, it's easy to overlook, but really important.
Yeah, it's so good because those simple things, the little things are the big things. And when you start
Mhm.
adding up all the little things, you realize how much of a gift this life is and how much
Yeah,
there is to be grateful and to excited about and to say hooray about. And you can really
right.
shift your
Even
energy.
in our even in our toughest times.
Mhm.
And the other thing that year really taught me was how much in my mind I could make a challenging situation harder, or I could make it easier.
Yeah,
And, so I started like, it was tough. It was the toughest situation I'd ever been through. But I noticed every time I would say to myself, or someone would say to me, "Oh, this is so hard." It's like, that's not helpful for me
right.
because when I say this is hard, I make it harder and I go into this closed down, heavy place.
Yeah,
And
we create with our words. So as soon as you
oh,
say this is hard, guess what you're going to get? It's going to be
right.
hard, just like you asked for. Yeah.
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 And even feeling on some weird level like we get points for things that are hard,
Right. It's like a badge of honor for some of
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, and so noticing when I'd say those things out loud, but also in my head when I'd say it, or when I had the energetic feeling in my body of it being hard, rather than this is, yep, and not denying, but yeah, this is challenging. And I had started this phrase at that point. It's like, how easy and enjoyable can I let this be?
Ooh, I love that. That's a
And
good
then,
one.
and some people almost have thought that seems a little blasphemous when you're dealing with death and you're dealing with all
Mm.
this situation. But my sense is when I can come, even in the situations that are toughest, when I can notice, well, how easy could I let this be? Could I ease up on myself? Could I do
Yeah.
it a little differently? And making room for joy also. Like, could there be an enjoyable moment? So could there be an energy of enjoyment, not wanting this to happen, but
Right.
in this day, how can I bring joy to it?
That's a
Maybe.
great distinction because there's so much that's out of our control. Like obviously the death, like we're all going to die, right? At some time that's
Mhm.
out of our control. And nobody knows when or how or why. We just it happens when it happens and it's out of control. And certainly not to celebrate that, but we can look at okay, this thing that happened, whether it's death or whatever it is, divorce, losing a business, all these things that happen to us that are out of our control. And we can say it happened but anything can be for our highest good if we decide it is so. So it's just finding those little things that you can, like you said, make it easy and enjoyable. It's not celebrating it, but it's like, how can I move past, transmute these feelings of pain and such um, disheartening times and transmute it into something bigger than myself, right? And I think
Right.
that's like a lot of what you're doing too with the work that you're doing now and how you help other people.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right. And so, like, if someone's like in a really tough week at work, and it's like, oh, well, this is just hard. And so the focus sometimes is you put your head down and you plow through and you get it done,
Mhm.
which doesn't tend to be the energy that's healthiest for us or the
Right.
people around us, And
Yes,
so
that too.
we could say, yeah, you've got major deadlines this week. How easy could you make this be?
Yeah.
Like, no, I can't. It's hard. It's like, okay, well, what could you do to make it a little easier?
Mm.
Well, I could make my lunch I had the night before.
Yeah.
I could put strawberries in my water because that would make me feel a little happy.
Right.
I
Yeah, it
could
could be
have
little things. Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Usually, like you said a while ago, it usually is little things,
Yes. Yeah.
and how could I talk to myself that makes it easier? Or what are the ways I talk to myself that make it harder? How could I take a 2-minute break to go out in the sunshine between the rain and move
Mhm.
around a little so I'm releasing some tension so I can come back and then get back to work on that deadline?
That's a good one. The sun and then just walking, getting in motion, that's a great energy shifter, being out in nature. Yeah,
Yeah.
these little
Yeah.
things, moment by moment, we can shift our perspective and we can decide it gets to be like, I can't control everything in my world, but I can make the most of it. I can make it as easy and joyful as possible.
Yes.
Or you can stick it stuck in that like heavy, we have a choice. And it's good to know that we
Mhm.
have that choice. And it's kind of like a muscle too when you start looking at the world that way. Like over time, it just becomes your default, and
Yes.
you're like wake up one day and you're like, oh. this is easy. And it doesn't mean your life doesn't have pain or like trouble, but it's just, you get to decide that it gets to be easy and part of your journey, and what is it here to teach me, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
become more effective and more loving and more available for the good that's trying to come.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
good. And I think everyone just needs to know this about themselves, because even people listening now and whatever struggle, because we all have struggle, we all have pain. And if we don't in this moment, we just had some, or there might be some around the corner. It's just part of being human. So really learning these tools that could be so simple, of celebrating the little small moments, shifting moment by moment. It's how we can just change the quality of our life. Everything that you've been through, and here you are smiling and happy and just, have such beautiful energy. Like we all have that possibility for us.
We do. And I think it's really important to remember what you said a little while ago, is that you have to feel it to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not the same
Yes.
as false positivity.
No.
This is not the same as, oh yeah, I'm fine right after
No.
something terrible happens.
Right. That does not work.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
No.
work at all. And in fact, it makes the misery prolong and get stuck in our bodies and, cause all sorts of physical and emotional problems.
It's like a pressure cooker when you do that, and the pressure just builds and builds. And when it lets loose, it's not pretty. That's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas actually when we can feel in our body and, like you said, move and breathe and know that these are a natural part, then they do move through.
Yeah.
They move through much more quickly than if we're either trying to be falsely positive or if we're stuck in that just get it done mode.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think feel all the emotions. They're all here to tell us something. Never push them down, but just get curious about them. What are you here to tell me? What are you here to tell me? Pain? What are you here to tell me? Fear? And just get in that place of curiosity, and then you can shift it. And it's a real, true shift, not the fake kind where you're like, everything's great. I'm so happy. Your words will be real but you have to work through it first. That's the key.
Really important. Yeah. And those questions you're asking, like, how do I move through this? How do I do this? Those are empowering questions.
Yeah.
And people sometimes will go into what I think of as disempowering questions, like, oh, why am I doing this again? Or, oh, why is this here again? Or what's wrong with me? Those are like not questions that help us move forward or even feel and deal with and understand what the pain has to say.
Yeah.
But the ones you said, like, okay, how do I move forward? What do you want me to know, pain, whether it's physical or emotion? What would you have me do? What's the next step I could take?
Yes.
Those,
powerful.
Yeah. They empower us.
Yes. Because really we're getting taught lessons. That's my belief as humans and incarnated in our human bodies. We're here as our souls are here to learn and grow. And so we're getting whatever lessons we need for that growth. So the more you resist it, the more pain you're going to get. But if you just become open to it and say, okay, what are you here to teach me? I'm ready to receive. You can just move forward. And it's really beautiful when you take on that perspective. I've seen it in my life. I know you've seen it in yours and the people that you work with, how powerful that is. It really is. And I invite everyone to try it on if you're not already using those tools. Sounds so simple, but it's probably the most powerful way.
I agree, Dawn. And sometimes I wonder if you've noticed this too. Sometimes people are like, when am I finished? Haven't I learned enough? It's like, never.
Never.
That's
the bad news.
It's also the good news.
It's also the good news. Yeah.
Because I want to keep growing as long as I'm here on this earthly plane. I want to keep growing and learning, and so the more we can just embrace all of it that comes with that curiosity, then the more that can happen. And we don't think of it as like we ever should have gotten to a place of being finished. But the lessons are not. I think sometimes we can think of the lessons as like, well, you haven't learned it yet, so here comes a lesson, rather than, oh, more learning. Oh, we get to, a good lesson.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's so good. And then the other thing we like to talk about here on this show is our fears, right? It's even the people that seem to most have it together. And I work with a lot of spiritual people, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and quote unquote, powerful people that have on the outside looking in, have all their stuff together. But I know behind the scenes, we're all human. We all have those thoughts that pop in. We have those fears. And even, listening to you now and everything you've been through and how powerful you are, do you still have some of those thoughts pop in? And if so, what are they and how do you work through them?
All the time.
Right.
It's I just accept that fear is going to be there, especially if I'm growing and doing things. A few years ago, I went to a Georgia O'Keeffe exhibit in Vancouver, BC, and it was so moved by her, the artist, and it was so moved by I thought, my gosh, this woman is fearless. She did these things at a time when women weren't supposed to paint like that, and they weren't supposed to live on their own, and she had a lover outside of marriage, and all these things. I thought, she's fearless. And then a few days later, I saw this quote by her. And it was, I have been absolutely terrified every minute of my life, and I've never let it stop me from doing a thing.
Yes, that's so good. And so good for you that you saw her as fearless and then saw that quote. It was the perfect reminder.
Yeah, it
We
was.
all are. It's just it's about going through it anyway.
And I can't
show up
say,
anyway.
yeah. I can't say like she did that I've never let it stop me from doing a thing, because I have. I can look at things in my life I would have done if I hadn't been afraid.
Yeah.
And I notice when I look at those things, I'm not as happy about them. And I don't tell myself I want to be fearless, because I think fears are just really natural.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to befriend them and be curious about them, and notice that often my fears, and I notice this with my clients and friends, our fears are really tied up with our longings.
They are. They so are.
Yeah.
To the point where I've even made it almost like a kind of a sick and twisted game for myself, where if I'm going to post something really vulnerable on my Facebook or share or have a conversation with someone, and I feel my heart beating really fast and my body, all that physical reaction, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I play this game no, you have to do this. This is so important. And it's true. The more scary something is, you have to do it. And the breakthrough on the other side is always so big.
That's so cool. I can feel that excitement, fear in my body when you say that. Yeah. That's great.
Interesting. And I'm still scared and I don't want to do it. And I'm having those conversations don't do it. You don't have to do it. You can just walk away. And then it's no, you have to do it. So I kind of have that conversation with myself, where it's the angel and the devil on the shoulder, they used to do in the cartoons. It's that conversation. But it's so empowering. And they are tied to our longings. And when you make that correlation, fearless is not the absence of fear. It's just feeling it and doing it anyway, because you know how powerful it is.
I love that. Not being stopped by our fears. Yeah. I was talking to a wonderful, talented young woman recently who has, been wanting to get her writing out in the world more and do readings and stuff. I'm like, okay, so when's the reading coming? And she's like, well, I'm scared. I'm like, and? That's not a stopping point.
Right. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So we keep going with it. So
let's acknowledge that. And
yeah. And what do we do to play with that? And so again, it's what you've been talking about. And we've been talking about the curiosity and the play. For me, the more I can make it play, the more fun it is. I was reading this morning about a skier in the Olympics this week. And she said one of the things, I don't remember what it was, maybe it was a snowboarder, I don't know. Anyway, one of the wonderful women athletes this week. And she was saying when she's at the top of her, about to come down on a run, so I think it must be a skier, I don't know. Anyway, she is about to come down on a run. And one of the things she does for herself is she says, I love this. I'm going to play with this.
Yeah.
And she smiles.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. Because when I go into a scary situation, if I can notice, I'm going to give a talk I haven't given, or I'm in a group I'm a little afraid of, or even I'm totally excited about it, there are going to be fearful sensations coming up.
Yep.
And partly it's the energy. And if I can open to it as an energy, and it can be an energy of excitement along with an energy of some fear, and I can feel it and ground it and let it move through my body and not be afraid of it, then I can dance with it.
That's so powerful right there, what you just said. That's so good. Yeah. And then I find too, once you get into the action piece, you might be right before you get on stage and you're feeling all that, those things come up. But as soon as you get into, one of the things I say when that happens is, this isn't about me. This is about whoever needs to hear this message. And I take the shift off of me and put it on to someone else. This is going to serve someone. And once you get out there and start talking, it all just goes away. And it's almost like an outer body experience, when you can look at it from that perspective that you just shared.
That is a beautiful perception. That's a beautiful way to do it, Dawn. And I noticed a few years ago, I was in a studio group, and it was being filmed live for this class on performance, and I was in the audience. I lost my voice
Oh, no.
No, I wasn't in the audience. I was on stage.
Oh,
And I
boy.
lost my voice over and over. And the teacher pointed it out, and I was really embarrassed. And I went home that night. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to go back the next day. And usually my voice, like on stage, is pretty strong. And so I like was up a lot of the night playing. It's like, I don't want to go back. Well, you're going back, so let's look at what's happening, you know. And then at one point I realized I had gotten stuck in the energy of pleasing rather than the energy of serving.
Yeah.
And I
Big
wanted,
difference there.
yeah, I wanted the teachers to think I was doing well. I wanted to,
Right.
I was going into this pleasing mode. And
Yeah.
when I'm in that, the energy is very different. It's much more likely to come out as a kind of wispy voice rather than a strong voice. And my energy kind of goes somewhere weird.
Yeah.
But
And
when
it
I
shows
do,
up through your throat, the throat chakra is like closing off, or and you can, but good noticing that you got curious about it. And it's like, okay, what's really going on here? And there's so much power in that, because then I'm assuming you shifted it the next day.
Absolutely. I did go back the next day. And
So
it's been something I've been aware of, you know, and it's what you said, like, you know, where you're thinking of like, this is just something that wants to come through me. I'm having fun with it. Like you said, who needs to, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'm going to let it come
It's
through.
not about me. Yeah.
And it's not about pleasing people or doing what you think people want you to do. It's about something bigger that comes through in service of truth or in creativity or love, whatever, however we want to think of that.
Yeah. So good. Well, I'm going to let everyone know. I'll let you tell them where they can get, follow you on social media and what you have going on, anything you want to promote. But the last question we always ask on Bare Naked Radio is, we're all about living a life true to yourself and not the one that others wish for you, and not having that deathbed regret of like, oh, I wish I had done this. So I always like to ask people, like, what's next for you? Is there anything that you still in this lifetime you just have to get done, or you would love? It would be like the dream come true moment, even kind of like a bucket list. Like what is that for you? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, the pieces of that come to mind are that I have several like partially finished books that, one is called Wild Wisdom, and it's based on a performance piece that just came through me in the middle of the night.
Oh, I love that.
And thanks. Yeah. And I've loved performing it, but it's like, it calls me, it says, we want you to do more with us. We want to bring you forward.
Yeah.
So I would like it to be, somehow develop it into a workbook, workshop. So that's one of the things that comes. Yeah, that really, and I can feel in my body that kind of excited resonance.
Yeah.
When I say that. So that's one piece that has really called me.
So when's it coming out? That's like the coach in me. That's like, okay, well, let's pick a day.
All right. Well, for some reason, November is coming up in my mind. So we'll see what happens with that.
I love it. Write that down.
I think I'm going to do a workshop with it this spring, and then there's a conference I'm applying to present it in the fall. And
awesome.
doing
Wild Wisdom. I just love that. That's a great title too. I can see that for you.
Thanks so much.
Doing it. It's good. So good.
Thank
Yay.
you. Yeah. And then just kind of more generally, I've been looking in the last few weeks at like all the stuff I started writing, and then I think kind of chickened out. I think like what happens for me when I chicken out, when I say it like that, is I let myself get distracted. I get kind of fuzzy about it, or I'll have self-doubt come up, and then I'll like work on a project for somebody else or do something that,
right.
And so it's like being loving with myself about that. And I'm trying to be loving, being as loving as I can with myself about that, but also realizing there's some things that have wanted to come through me that I haven't been really true to.
Yeah, that's big. That's for a lot of people. And that's me too. And I've been making myself do it anyway, because I feel like that's my message to the world is, feeling the fear and sharing it anyway. And it's so beautiful, because I always make it, I go back to that. It's not for me. Somebody else needs to hear this message. And I'm never let down when I share something like that I've had my own self-doubt come about. There's always someone like thanking me or calling, there's somebody that it moved. So I see that for you too. So, but the good news is you have all these things you can go revisit and finish and share.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate your perspective and your support with that. That's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And of course, you can go to barenakedradio.com and I'll have all your links and everything so people can follow you and see what you're up to. But do you have anything coming up that you want to promote or talk about, or where can people find you on social media? It's all about you, whatever you've got going on.
Thank you. Well, the easiest place to connect with me probably is leabayles.com. And if you go to leabayles.com/gifts, I have a number of gifts there. One is
Yay.
thrive and shine every day, even in your toughest times, with unshakable self-care. So that's
good.
a program I've created for, those times when you think, oh, I can't possibly take care of myself. Well, we want it to be a way of taking care of yourself, great care of yourself, that's just integrated into everything you do. So that's what that program is about. And I have different levels of that. And there's a gift package, unshakable self-care gift package on that page. And I'd also love for you to come to my radio show, We Are More Radio, helping people grow into the fullness of who we really are as individuals and also, as a collective, as a human species. It's this time that we're evolving into something bigger. We're being called to that by our individual challenges and our global challenges. So I invite people to check that out.
Yeah, it's time to rise. I love that you're taking that on. Yeah, it's good.
Thank you. Boy, and what you're doing just feels so important to me in that.
Oh, thank you, Lea.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's LeaBayles.com is the right spelling. And like I said, all the links are on barenakedradio.com. And I just love you and your energy, Lea. And we started off the show, you were telling me about the otters that were swimming in the river. And I just that's like so perfect because I just see you're this special person with these beautiful energy.
Thank you.
Otters want to come and play with you. So
thank you so much. Yeah, well, I thought it was really synchronistic that they came right before I was going to, just 5 minutes before I was going to talk to you. We have a pond with a stream flowing through, and they don't come very often, but when they do, I just so love it. And they're one of my spirit animal allies.
Yes.
And, just that I see that energy in you so much. You're that joyful play and that wonderful quality, being able to dive deep with people. So when I saw them this morning, I thought, wow, perfect that they're here right before I go talk to Dawn.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for seeing that in me and thank you for who you are in the world and for sharing with all of us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. For me, so much. Great. Bye-bye. Bye to everybody.
Thank you for listening to Bare Naked Radio. We invite you to join us in the Naked Soul Tribe on Facebook and sound off about this episode. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you connect with your host at Dawn Gluskin on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All show notes and links are accessible on barenakedradio.com.